What the language models are going to unlock for us is saying, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? So let's say it's November and you're like, I would like to get ready for ski season. I have 3 big ski trips planned. I don't want to hurt myself. I want to fly down the mountain. What should I do? Right. So let's give you a set of really good recommendations on what you should do for the next 2 to 3 months to get ready for ski season.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Benary. Today I'm joined by Krystal Zell, CEO of Tonal. In this episode, we discuss the company's intelligent strength training device. Krystal talks about the importance of building a profitable, sustainable business. Plus, we discuss the impact of AI, creating a truly personalized workout, and bringing strength training to new audiences. Let's get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM provides fitness and health facilities with smart workout solutions built on its ecosystem of hardware, software, and partners. But it's more than cool tech. Their connected training experience delivers business results while helping members reach their wellness goals. If you run a gym, health club, YMCA, or any kind of fitness facility, you should check them out. Visit egym.com to learn more. Hi, Krystal. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jared. So nice to be with you today.
Yeah, excited to chat. Lots to discuss kind of across the industry. And I think most listeners are familiar with Tonal and have a good awareness about kind of the company and the kind of connected fitness space in general. So I'm excited to dive into some of the details. Maybe to kick things off, you initially joined the company at a kind of a tumultuous time, both for connected fitness, for the broader economy, but also for Tonal. What has that experience been like for you?
That's a great question. Yeah. So I joined Tonal in the middle of 2022, which was most definitely the period kind of post sort of the big COVID growth period for a lot of connected fitness, where things were settling into kind of that sort of post COVID timeframe. And I would say, it's such an interesting, it's been such an interesting kind of couple of years watching the industry. So I think what's so exciting about connected fitness is certainly I have a deep belief, as many people do, that over time, if you think about the whole fitness industry, connected fitness is going to grow, is going to continue growing as a percent of total fitness. And that had started before the pandemic. The pandemic drove pretty significant growth. And then as people started to have more options, obviously, they kind of added different sort of options to their fitness routines. But so there's sort of the rebound effect, the natural rebound effect after that. However, I believe a lot of people believe we're just going to continue to see long term the growth in connected fitness as a percent of total fitness, and the overall fitness industry is growing, right? So it's a great long term space. You just have to sort of work through some of the short term challenges. And that's certainly what I've been focused on for the last year and a half, is just kind of getting the company into a place where it can really be set up for long-term growth to take advantage of that shift in connected fitness.
Yeah, and navigating that in terms of going from that 2020, maybe 2022 mindset to now, what are the kind of key objectives? How would you maybe even compare and contrast like what that mindset was and now where it is and how you do get it to that place of kind of like sustainable growth?
That's right. So I think there were a couple things in that period that happened. There was the first thing was COVID and the growth in the COVID demand, right, for in-home equipment. But then secondarily, I think there was we were still living in the era of sort of free money, right? So there was just tons of growth. It was growth at all costs. We're not living in that era anymore. As many people know, you should be getting 5% on your savings accounts. Like, there's a pretty significant interest rate out there. So you have to be more thoughtful with money. So it's just a matter of really thinking about how do you balance growth so that you are building truly what is a long-term sustainable company. So that means, practically speaking, that you can find a path to profit and figuring out, how does your business model work so that over the long term you can stay in business, rather than constantly sort of trying to buy so much growth that it really weighs down the overall economics of your business. So that's a little bit of how, we've been thinking. But more interestingly, I think from a consumer perspective is not only is it important, I think, to drive a path to profitability so that you can sustain and be around over the long term, but also so that you can find opportunities to invest in your product. So we are very focused on investing in the future of Tonal. We've been doing a ton of work building out new features, spending a ton of time thinking about how does AI improve our member experience? Like how can we leverage the amazing capabilities of the new, technological wave over the past 18 to 24 months to, use it as a fuel for improved member experience. So it's about the last couple of years have been about seeking that kind of profitable profile for the business so that we can really invest in that member experience over the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of those things, artificial intelligence, data, personalization, strength training, I want to definitely get into those trends as well. I think that's really where a lot of the excitement comes, both from the industry operator side of like, how do we achieve this, but also from the consumer side of like, we want these things as well. On the sustainability, profitability front, how close are you to achieving, maintaining that? Like, I'm just thinking about like from discussing objectives with the company and that messaging across the organization, like, well, one, how close is it to that being the reality? And two, like, how do you get other folks in that mindset when it does come from that place of like, it was free money and now it's like, no, we have to like tighten up and we have to dial in and like this being the core focus.
The employees at Total are they're just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful group of people, incredibly hardworking, incredibly determined. Tonal is the place where the people that come to Tonal to work are mission driven. They are focused on making the world a better place by helping people be healthy and strong and fit. And they have been incredible through this entire, period of just and it's been a lot of change. I think it's been hard. I think the whole industry is going through this, right? It's been a little bit challenging. But they are truly incredible and have done an amazing job at just adjusting how we think, how we invest, how we spend, how we work to deliver on all these things that we need. So, I would tell you, I can't give you, specifics because we're a private company and everything's kind of held tightly. But I will say we are doing a great job on that path. I feel really good about our financials. We're in great shape. We did a fundraising over a year ago and got the balance sheet into a really good place, super healthy. And we've been running the business in a really disciplined way. So, we're in a really good place and feeling positive about the future.
Yeah, when you think about the future and then you mentioned coming to Tonal in 2022, obviously taking over the CEO role, raising that capital. That transition for you was like you didn't come traditionally from like the fitness industry, like the health and fitness world. Like, what was that motivation? What were you looking at as like this is seems like a great opportunity. This is why I'm excited about it, and like even stepping into that role.
So I have always had a passion for working in businesses that really make people's lives better. And they're kind of loosely connected. But so I've spent time in my career in hospitality. I love the travel space. I love hospitality because the whole, and if you've ever worked in the hospitality industry, there's just like a tremendous vibe about hospitality and like your mission is to serve and create memorable experiences for guests, right? And people in hospitality really are motivated and driven in that way, and I loved that. I loved working. I worked at Home Depot for many years. That business and that company is super super motivated to help people essentially make their homes, right? Help whatever you're trying to do is to make your home a home. And what could be like more meaningful to people in a lot of respects than sort of having this comfortable home that they live in. So Tonal really, while different is than those two examples, is really an emotional product in a way, right? It is about your health. Like the reason to work out on Tonal every single day is to improve the health and your lifespan and your health span, as a lot of people talk about. And it does that in a way that's super efficient and efficacious, but also in a way that's convenient for our members, especially members who are incredibly busy, have a lot going on in their lives, just can't afford the time to be commuting to a gym and, back in the mix of all the other things that they're trying to accomplish in their lives. And so there's a true, real mission behind what we're doing, that I find to be, very worthwhile and very attractive. I certainly have always had an interest in fitness. I am not an ex athlete, but I am definitely somebody who works out every single day and is very focused on fitness. So I enjoyed the industry quite a lot. But I think that there's such a power in health and wellness. And I think about, for people's careers, what I love about this industry too is that the people that work in it are passionate about it and really passionate about like creating great outcomes for people. I think that's just such a wonderful thing. We have a lot of choices of where we can all work and how we can spend our days. So to choose to spend your time working on something that really helps help people to live in a healthier way, I think is a privilege.
It resonates with me, and I've spent most of my career in the industry across every which way. And I think it's been great to see reaching a point where so much of it is people who are passionate about the industry and health and well-being and have devoted their lives to it, but also reaching this place where then it does attract people with different expertise or experiences that can come in and apply this hospitality or, very business focus, or dialing in the kind of like how we scale this company that I think just earlier times in like the maturation of the industry, it was lacking that kind of like substance or significance with like, this is how we take and execute this great vision that maybe this very passionate founder had. So it's always exciting to me to see how these worlds overlap, and then what that looks like for the future, both internally, like within the industry, but also health outcomes for consumers and people. Part of that obviously is like thinking about how to grow in this, as you put it, like sustainable way and kind of new world post COVID. What are the kind of successful growth levers or initiatives or channels even right now for Tonal that it's like, this is what's working and what you're excited about?
Yeah. So, I think I would say one of the things I'm really excited about is we're still a really young company. The product is still really young, actually, sort of just started getting going right before COVID. And I think we've had this adoption curve. We've had an early adoption curve. And I think our adoption curve has been very technologically forward individuals, right? People who are just tech first, they're early adopters in sort of technological terms. And we also have had the early adopters who are really just fitness obsessed, right? And see the value that this kind of a product creates for them because they're already very focused on fitness. This solves a problem in their lives, and that's great. So, in this intersection of technologically oriented and fitness obsessed, then is kind of the profile of who's buying the product. However, Tonal as a product has the potential for a much bigger audience over time. We think about working moms like me, for example, or just from a sort of psychographic perspective of people who are interested in fitness, spending time on fitness, but maybe are not fitness obsessed. So they're not new to fitness, but they're looking for ways to bring it into their lives more easily. Maybe over time, this is more into the future. It's expanding into supporting people as they're, recovering from treatments and injuries. Because the way the device works, it can very much help you build your strength over time, set up programs that help you recover from shoulder surgery, things like that. So there are a lot of customers that we have yet to really reach because we're small and because, we've sort of really just getting started. So I think there's a lot of growth, left for a company, for the core product that we have today before we kind of even venture into other new products, which certainly is another potential avenue for growth.
Yeah, I think about it a lot as it relates to a lot of the companies in the connected fitness space, right? That are truly innovative and introduce something that does check that box on convenience and results and potentially a wedge into much larger markets beyond the already fit, right? Somebody that I already work out, just give me something else that I can use and I'm going to buy it. And in some ways, like the pandemic, maybe I don't want to say the worst thing that could have happened, but like certainly the way that it played out, accelerating expectations in a way that just made living up to that unrealistic, right? If those companies, Total included, could have gone in the natural evolution of the company and like getting out into market and reaching people and having them feel like they're getting the results that they want. But now it's been kind of flipped on its head of like we were pulled so far into the future and now we have to like try to get our wits back about us and like build a sustainable company under that. Um, when you think about those areas beyond maybe like the already fit or people that are early adopters or even just the at home market, how are you tackling that? Whether it's, you know, B2B, commercial, residential, sports, healthcare. What does that even prioritization within that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question and one we spend a ton of time on. So one the first part of that is we want more people to be able to experience the Tonal product. So earlier in our history we had retail stores, but retail stores are just a really expensive proposition. And so we've reduced down only to the few that really work well for us. But we know that we want people to be able to try a Tonal. So we're out there working on partnerships that kind of create that opportunity for us. So we have this amazing partnership we just kicked off with Spartan Race, and in the last Spartan Race was in LA. There were a ton of tonals set up, and it was one of the obstacles in the race. So it was great because we had a whole bunch of people get the opportunity to try the product and experience what it can do. And so we're looking for more and more partnerships like that. So anybody out there listening who's like, I've got the partnership for you, feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And I know, Joe, that you have a fantastic listener base. And so if anybody says, hey, I have an idea for you, that would be awesome. So the partnerships is big. We want more and more distribution, but we want distribution that brings a physical component to the customer. E-commerce distribution we sort of have covered, right? We don't, it's that's not where the opportunity is. It's in the physical world. It's in the IRL world. That's where we want to get some more, opportunities. And then I would say the other opportunity I see for us is to really evolve our messaging and our branding and how we talk to potential customers. I don't think that we've gone through different phases, and I still think there's this opportunity to really land what the product can do for a person and their family, actually, because it's a product that's for everybody in the family to use in the household. And so we're still working kind of on that and how do we get that right so that the potential customer can really understand, what Tonal can bring to them.
Is it likely, I guess, or even potentially of interest that, you walk into a boutique studio or even kind of like a big box gym and there's tonals there?
Yeah, no, I think that we've looked at definitely pursuing different opportunities in both of those spaces. Absolutely. Yeah.
The Fit Insider podcast is brought to you by our friends at EGYM. This is an exciting partnership for us. And not just because EGYM makes some of the most innovative fitness products out there, but because the entire EGYM team, led by their CEO, Philip, is committed to making health, fitness, and well being more accessible for everyone. And that's a mission we can get behind. By combining their smart equipment with integrated software and hundreds of connected partner brands, EGYM helps fitness facilities stand out by delivering a personalized, gamified workout experience that improves outcomes and member engagement. So if you're a gym or health club operator thinking about how to best serve your members while driving business results, go see what EGYM is up to at egym.com. On the kind of like messaging front, when you think of audiences and that opportunity, it is challenging to convey, because most people where their mind goes with strength training and weights is like, oh, I'm going to get bulky or, oh, I'm going to get hurt. A lot of these potential barriers. I think fortunately, it's kind of moved into the mainstream with longevity and just overall health and uh, bone density, like a lot of things beyond, oh, how do I become a bodybuilder, right? Which is like so like this very outdated way of thinking about strength training. How have you been able to, or maybe how are you trying to take advantage of that shift just in like awareness, interest, demand between people who are like, recognizing, yeah, like I need to be strength training and potentially longer and later into my life. So like tonal obviously fills that void. So connecting those dots is an opportunity, but also, as you said, a challenge.
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, in very a bunch of different ways, but one example that I'll highlight is we have a lot of editorial. So on our site, we have a great I'll give her a shout out. Molly is our head of content, and she started out as our head of editorial and has now taken over as our head of content. She's terrific, and she has written tons of pieces along with her team that really help connect the dots between what the science says around strength training and the importance for longevity, and how tonal really can deliver on that for the member. But the science is really incredible on strength training, and it is, if there's one thing you're going to do as you age, one thing is to focus on strength training, really. And it doesn't have to be, it's not about bulking up. It doesn't have to be about maxing out. It doesn't have to be about going to failure. I mean, the thing about tonal and strength training in general is you're right. There can be this kind of perception of the bodybuilder, right? And that's fine. That's great. That's one segment of the population. I do weight training 3 to 4 times a week. I'm absolutely the opposite of that. I do not do that. I do lots of high reps of lower weights. Every now and then I push the weight because you have to kind of hit plateaus and go beyond the plateaus. But I do it for my bone density, for my muscle stability, and then also for stability and balance. Because as you age, those become so critical to living a long, healthy life. And I also do it because it feels great during and when you're done. And there's one other benefit that people don't always talk about, which is if you're really pushing yourself on strength, your heart rate's, moving. And so you're getting a cardio benefit too. So it's kind of like if you have 45 minutes to do a workout, if I only have 45 minutes, I am absolutely doing 45 minutes of strength training instead of 45 minutes on a treadmill, or cycling, because the total benefit of that strength training is so much higher in that limited time that you have available, especially I'm speaking to my own demographic. I don't know how many of my demographic are out there listening on the podcast, but I just turned 45, right? So 45-year-old females absolutely need to be doing strength training. It's really, really critical for longevity.
Yeah, it's been great to see just like I guess the acceptance, awareness, maybe a combination of those things, and also the the barriers coming down, whether that's in person where boutiques have figured out how to kind of create an on ramp to the barbell. And in Tonal's case, really just like saying there's an alternative to walking into the gym and being super overwhelmed by like, wow, what do I do with all these weights and how do they go? And how like certainly going to hurt myself if I don't have some type of education around it. So yeah, that category has been reinvented and reinvigorated, really, which is exciting to see. Another piece of that, and you alluded to it earlier, you there's both the practical application, but also like the buzzwords of AI and personalization and data driven. And obviously like there's like anything, the hype with that, but then there's like the actual execution. So how does that show up in like the user member experience for Tonal? And then how do you build on that?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And the technology, there's been so much previous to the last 24 months around AI capabilities. But what's happened with the language models is incredible in terms of your ability to essentially take these models to large populations who can just sort of interact directly with the data. And I think there's a lot of that's going to be unlocked. I really do. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. So the first piece I'll talk about is that we've always used AI. around the weight setting. So you talked about being intimidated, walking into a gym, not knowing exactly how much weight to do, right? And how many reps, how much weight. Well, that's what our AI can very quickly help the member assess. It's like, okay, you sign up for a program. So program is designed to be a balanced set of workouts over some period of time. It could be 2 weeks, 4 weeks is probably the most common. And then each individual exercise, the machine algorithms are understanding your body and delivering a weight that's recommended for you based on the number of reps that you're about to do. So there's this machine learning, artificial intelligence built into that. Then the thing that we're starting to lean into, which I think is really interesting and exciting, is that's kind of at an individual program level and at workout level. The AI is designing the optimal workout. But there's a step before that, which is I have my own individual goals of what I'm trying to accomplish, and everybody's different. We have never previously really had a whole bunch of information about what the member's trying to achieve. We have a little bit of information. We ask them a few questions and then optimize from there. But what the language models are going to unlock for us, and we're sort of in the process of working through this, is saying, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? So let's say it's, November and you're like, I would like to get ready for ski season. I have 3 big ski trips planned. I don't want to hurt myself. I want to fly down the mountain. And how do I, what should I do? Right. So let's give you a set of really good recommendations on what you should do for the next 2 to 3 months to get ready for ski season. Or let's say you had a minor level shoulder injury, you're just recovering from it. Hey, I need, a set of workouts for the next 3 weeks to kind of lightly improve my mobility on my left shoulder. I always have problems with my left shoulder. That's why I'm pointing at it. But I'm fine everywhere else. Like, so the future for us is about designing the workout for the customer, for the member that really personally meets their needs. And the reason I'm excited about it and us doing it is because the data that we have is so different than what everybody else in the space has, because we have all these members, 150,000 members working out 10 times a month, 37 minutes every time they do it. We have all of the data, all of the tracking. We know what happens if you do this program, how much stronger you get. We know all of this data. And so that data, that underlying data, is really going to help deliver very strong recommendations to the member that are truly personalized. And there's nobody else that has the kind of performance data that we have. And data really becomes, the strength of your AI is based on the strength of the data behind it. And so we're so excited about what that coming together can really do.
Yeah, that's obviously a huge opportunity, and you know that as you're describing it and figuring out how to apply it. It's interesting to see this shift from, health data in general, which is like how much can we collect and what does it mean and how do we interpret it, and ultimately coming out on the other side of like how does that show up for the consumer, right? You don't want to overwhelm them. What It's almost like the more data you collect and the better you execute on it, it's like the less you're actually showing them in terms of like, hey, here's what all this information is. And it's more in terms of like, this is how it applies to you. Go do this thing and like get the results that you want. How are you thinking about at this stage, like interoperability, integrating data from other wearables or devices or equipment, or letting other people access your data and use it for some of these health outcomes?
Yeah, so we're all still figuring it out, sort of early stages. I think from a consumer perspective, if I step back and say, what is somebody going to want? I think the consumer is going to want a more holistic view, right, of the recommendations around their health. So they're going to want to have an understanding of, based upon, let's say, the strength programs they're doing, what their protein intake needs to be. And are they achieving the protein intake? So very much aware that, like, so we are very focused on strength, just because from a capabilities, expertise, and a resources perspective, that's where we're really good. So we're really, really focused on strength. However, we do have this point of view that overall wellness is definitely what consumers long term are going to want. And I think how all that comes together is still a little bit to be determined based, but because, nobody's really quite figured out what that model is going to look like. I would say, though, that as that gets developed, we'll be an eager participant in this sort of ecosystem of health and wellness data to support ultimately what's going to be good for our members.
Yeah, and certainly totally differentiated in terms of like the strength aspect of it, because there's a lot of companies at this point, right, that have heart rate data or step data or whatever that might sleep data, but it's like how many companies have the strength data? It's like pretty unique spot to be in. You kind of mentioned earlier, like, hey, maybe there are other products. How do you? So strength is definitely your core expertise, and is it additional strength products? Is it other modalities? Is it, Tonal evolving into quote unquote the wellness platform or integrating in a way that opens that door? Yeah, how do you think about that
Yeah,
space?
I think it's all about timing. I think right now, as we look over the more nearer term, there's still so much more that we can do in strength. And so I'm motivated by that the most and the team right now and sort of solving because I do think cardio modalities, there's so many options on the market. Lots and lots of options, right, on the market. I think where we are, there's so many fewer options, right? Like there's just not a lot. I mean, there's obviously there's gyms, there's boutique fitness, there's in-home kind of traditional weights, and then there's us. There's very few really in this intelligent strength category. It's still so new. So I think there's a lot more to do and a lot more to build out in strength before we would sort of move into what I think of as truly more crowded spaces where I think there's less differentiation, honestly, like from player to player. And I feel like we're really building a very differentiated member experience in an area that's just less invested in overall in the market. So,
Whether it's specific to strength or across maybe modalities, there's been a conversation, obviously just given pandemic stuff, and then afterwards, like consolidation. Consolidation is kind of coming to the broader industry, but also maybe within strength. How do you think about like one? Do you agree with that? And two, would you consider yourself in a place of being a consolidator?
yeah, I think that if you look around the market, we're, you know, so I'm a business person at the core, right? If I just, as a business person, step back and look at all the development that happened in this space, all of the new products that came to market, lots of, investment in the space, and then kind of where we're at now with where the investment ecosystem is. You look around and you would say that's the natural ingredients for when consolidation happens because it's hard to stand alone when you're super subscale. So let's say you've built something interesting, people are starting to sort of, you know, you sort of have some product market fit, people are starting to buy the product. But so many of the kind of different companies in our space, you need a certain amount of scale to get to a point where, you can be profitable, like I talked about earlier. So I would expect that we're going to see consolidation in the space just because of the industry dynamics and they tend to sort of be ripe for it. Us as a consolidator, we're sort of still figuring out where we land there and kind of keeping our eye on the ecosystem. And so I don't really have much to say on the topic, to be honest. But I do think on a macro level, I think we should all expect to see consolidation. And we are seeing consolidation already. And there's actually several examples of it. So I think it'll continue for some time.
Yeah, as we get to the end of the conversation and I think continue to like look ahead, it does sound like, figuring out sustainability, profitability, pursuing the areas that are unique to Tonal and unique to that strength training, intelligent strength training competency, but also recognizing the company is, raised like almost $600 million. What does that return outcome even like outlook look like for shareholders? And you mentioned, right, private company and that being closely held. How do you think about, kind of continuing down that path of recognizing, like, whether it's an exit, an acquisition, IPO, like obviously all the different outcomes that there are, where you even are on that timeline and how you think about like managing that expectation that does kind of loom?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky to have great investors who are huge believers in the space of connected fitness and huge believers in Tonal as a product in that space. And they very much take the long view that we have brought something to market that never existed before, like creating a category all unto itself. And it's therefore going to take some period of time to really build the long term of this business, but that it is unique and it is differentiated. And so that we should treat it as such. We have the time to, and based upon that's why you get to sustainability and that's why you get to profitability. Because when you do that as a business, it gives you the breathing room and the time to really decide where you want to play, how you want to win, and go after it in a very disciplined way. So that you can really build long-term value for the business. And that's essentially what we're focused on doing.
You bring that kind of like that presence to even the conversation, the approach, like the measured discipline, that traditional business background, like really just, it almost seems like, I don't know if this is true or not, but my perception, at least through this conversation, is like just turning off the noise and being like, look, if we're going to do this, like this is the way we're going to have to go about it. And we're fortunate enough to have a unique product and a unique offering and the kind of, roadmap to go ahead and do that. So I think that's important, obviously, at this kind of stage to say like, no, we're kind of sticking to our guns and like this is how we go about it. And it's not every founder or CEO can do that in a way where it's like, we just have to execute and maintain that kind of approach.
Yeah, I think the business of fitness can be very faddish, right? Like it's like we can all think of examples over the course of our lives of what we've seen. We are not interested in that, right? Like, so we are trying to build a business that creates real long term value for members, for shareholders, for employees that will be here in the future. That we're just trying to build a long lasting, great company as opposed to hit a fad, exit a fad. You know what I mean? That is not what we're trying to accomplish. So we keep very cognizant of that. And I think that's, something for the just maybe fitness industry as a whole, right? As it matures is to sort of be thinking about how do you build the great companies of the future.
Absolutely. And with that, I think that's a great place to wrap up and leave people with like thinking about, how do we do that? And with that as maybe like a North Star. But before we do, where should people follow along? What should we look out for? Yeah, is there anything else that we should know that we haven't gotten to?
Yeah, definitely. Everything's on our website, tonal.com. Check out the product there. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach out, feel free to reach out to us. I'm Krystal at tonal.com with a K. And but you can also check out our social communities, especially on Facebook. We have very vibrant social communities, so feel free. There's lots of very engaged members that will talk about the product quite a lot. It's great. You can get a whole sense of what it does without before you ever get one, by going to the communities. And yeah, so we'll see you there.
One more thing before you head out, help us spread the word. Take a minute to rate and review the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or share this episode with a friend. And if you like conversations like this, you'll love the Fitt Insider newsletter. We send it every Tuesday. The link is in the description. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week.